Good evening, everyone.
Well, hello,
I don't
hello.
know if the camera is tall enough for me.
Uh-oh, I can help you out. I didn't set it quite yet. There you go.
Much better.
There, perfect.
Framed up, perfectly framed up. We got some training on video at Tony Robbins Business Mastery on like centering up your face vertically in the frame and stuff. And we started building a studio. We got some lights and some sound dampening cloth and all kinds of stuff. Trying to step up our game for y'all.
Yeah,
Hopefully we can be more visible and
yeah.
audible and that sort of thing.
Got these lights that help keep us awake 8 o'clock at night.
We're definitely not falling asleep with these lights on.
We are always trying to up our game. It was Bucky who's on the call. It was actually about a year ago at this time. We were in Hawaii and we did a launch of, I think it was Hamilton Furlough Raymond,
Yep.
right? And we did it like just from our tiny little laptop in our hotel room. So we like right now, we have 3 screens and like just stuff galore. And we were like, Bucky, we know Bucky, he lives locally. So we're like, Bucky, is there anything we could do to improve? And he's like, you guys need a producer. Like you can't be like on chat and answering questions and trying to do your slides. And we're like, that's a great idea. And so Rachel joined our team in January. So just a couple months later. And one of her very first responsibilities, we were like, we go on Zoom all the time. It's crazy. We talk for hours on end. And we would really like for you to be our producer. So that's how.
Now we try to always, even when we were in LA launching the tech fund last week, Rachel was still producing us, and it was really neat. So we're there with Christian Mack and Scott Ryan, like super sophisticated, accomplished people, and they were kind of marveling a little bit that so we got this whole production set up into like one large airline carry-on or not check bag. And
not a carry-on.
Not a carry-on. No, it was a very
Don't oversell us.
Very large, very heavy checked bag. And we had our producer, and we were like kind of transforming their office into a studio and stuff. And they're kind of marveling at that. So it made me feel good. It's all about Kaizen, continuous improvement. And if anyone has any suggestions on what we could do to make your experience better, more compelling, let us know. When we were at Tony Robbins' studio in person, that was like pretty insane. Yeah. I mean, it's the most compelling, engaging studio environment I've ever seen or heard of. So definitely encourages you to step the bar up when you or step the bar up, raise the bar or step up your game.
Yeah.
When you're in that kind of atmosphere.
Yeah. And I know Rachel put together a feedback survey. So that will go out, I believe, with your replay email. We got just a few last time. And, we know that's part of it, that feedback tends to be very bipolar. It tends to be very negative feedback or very positive feedback. That's just how all feedback works across all industries. So it can be sometimes hard to sort of tease out like what the masses truly want without getting a good representative sampling. So we'd love it if you would take really just a few minutes. We purposefully made our feedback survey very simple because we know time is the most precious thing any of us have. So if you could just, I think it's like, I don't know, 5 or 6 questions. So we'd love feedback.
With our team, we require every team member to submit a survey on a scale of 1 to 10 at the beginning of our weekly meeting on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? Or how much energy do you have? And that's it. It's just something really that simple, just a basic article of discipline. So yeah, we really appreciate your feedback. And I'm sure Rachel can throw the feedback form into chat so you can click around and give us some feedback while you're online with us tonight.
Yeah, love to hear how everyone's doing. Recognize a lot of the names. I'm starting to recognize more and more names over time. So that's a fun process, but a lot of names I don't yet recognize. Would love to hear where you're from and maybe how your summer wrapped up. Our summer, so this time, like the first 2 or 3 weeks of September is the whole reason why people live in Minnesota. The summer is really lovely and you're just like driven to be outside because like our kids are like, I don't want to go outside. And I'm like, there are 100 days that you can be outside a year. You're going outside. And they're like, okay. But this time of year, it's like right out of a magazine. We literally went apple picking this weekend. Like it couldn't get like more stereotypical. So the end of our summer has been really quite beautiful.
The next few months are quite enchanting in Minnesota. It's like a stereotype, but yeah, let's go out and watch the leaves change. But it really is just incredibly gorgeous. Yeah.
So if you want to drop into chat, kind of how you're doing or what you're wrapping up this summer, that's super fun. It gives us a lot of energy as we're presenting. We'll go ahead and get started. We're a few minutes after the hour here. So we have our slides to share. can I get a couple of yeses or thumbs up or something in chat if you are able to see the slides successfully? Rachel says
All
looks
right.
good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always feel free to put in the chat any questions you have. We might be able to answer that, kind of in the moment if it makes sense, or
Yep.
we'll answer those questions when we get to the end here. But what's something you'd like to learn tonight? Problem you're struggling with that we might be able to touch on as we're going through our prepared content. What can we do to bring you the most amount of value?
Absolutely. I think if we are, getting a reputation for anything, I hope it's growth and excellence, followed very closely by we will stay until every single question is answered. We just really believe that if y'all have taken the time to carve some time out of your busy life to come to spend time with us, that it's, our obligation to you that we deliver to you what you want from this time. So if you put a question in chat, we will make sure it gets answered. So let's get started. Timeless is, if we have anything that is intellectual property, I would say it's timeless, right? Most of our presentations we make very contemporaneously. So we might be working on our slides like up until the day of, because we want them to be right to the minute of what exactly is the state of the market, what exactly have, the last 3 or 4 offers that we've written looked like, just try to be very up to the minute. And timeless is the exact opposite. So we made these slides over a year ago. I actually have what we call our credibility slide in there from when we made it, and I left it in. I thought that'd be super fun. So
I get to see the slides for the first time too.
Yeah. And I thought now was a great time. So I first did this presentation at the Passive Income MD conference. It was, of course, virtual because of COVID. So that's called, the official name of that conference is Financial Freedom Through Real Estate Investing, but everyone knows it as PIMCon. It's for physicians and other high income professionals to come together and talk about real estate. And nothing has changed. Of course, nothing has changed because timeless is timeless. It is the set of principles that have guided our real estate investing journey for about 12 years now. And we're big believers in having a timeless set of principles coupled with an agile set of tactics that changes. For us, it's about every quarter. And tactics might be things like, I'm willing to pay $280,000 for a single family home, or I'm willing to pay $300,000 for a single family home. But the type of single family home is part of the principles that doesn't change at all, which for us in a few sentences would be a good high quality home with solid bones in a good neighborhood that has something around it going on, whether it's a new school, new transportation, new parks, that can either have forced appreciation through quick value add, like deep renovation, or is in an area that's likely to appreciate over time. That is our entire investment thesis for single family homes. So I hope that's a quick example of what is the difference between timeless and then changing the tactics, say every quarter or so. Timeless is always relevant, but PIMCon is coming up in September. So I thought it would be fun to do this now. And then I just think there's more, what would you call it, Nick? Like people are more stirred up than we have ever seen.
Absolutely.
People are like, well, what about interest rates? Okay, well, interest rates were the same in 2018 as they are now. No one talks to us about interest rates in 2018. I don't think we ever heard that word. So just trying to provide a sense of certainty and clarity around principles that matter no matter what's happening out there, no matter what the interest rates are, no matter what's happening geopolitically, what's going on with the president or the Fed. These are the principles that have guided us all the way. Couple of updates of some things we have going on. That's for you.
That's for me. Okay.
Yeah, I need to take a breath.
Sorry. So we just launched our tech fund. So this is Black Swan Tech Fund 1. You can go to blackswantechfund1.com if you're interested in investing. There's kind of 2 buckets there, one for qualified purchasers, one for accredited investors. The accredited investor bucket, last I checked, is about 25% full after our few days after launch. So I'd recommend jumping in if you are interested in getting involved in that vehicle. Space is relatively limited there, but a really neat opportunity. We'll have the replay on the site there. wait, we have the replay on the site, right?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
We have the webinar we replay on the site we did live with our business partners in LA. Just a really neat way to offer diversification to our community, diversifying out of the real estate asset class, and kind of going back to our roots in technology. I had 15 years in the tech industry before doing real estate, and a lot of our success, I think, comes from applying the principles of medicine and technology to real estate. Those are very progressive trades, and real estate is not so much a progressive trade. So yeah, just kind of going back to our roots, and we are unbelievably excited about this opportunity. Very high rate of return, 8% preferred rate of return, and historically it's hit a 30 to 40% IRR. So just a ridiculously good investment opportunity with people that we really trust and love, and have really inspired us to adopt the model that we have with our private equity fund structure as well. So we feel,
Speaking of,
yeah,
Fund 2 has a little more space in it.
it does have a little more space in it, but not much. So we're down under 10 million in space now. So this has been launched for about 90 days, somewhere in that territory. And we now have less than 10 million of the 30 million available. Fund 2 is going great. So we're deploying the capital about as fast as we're raising it. So it's really, efficient from that perspective. We just closed on Tanara Villa Apartments on Thursday. So that's super exciting. So that's the first, big asset to close in Fund 2. And then we have 4 more closings lined up over the next 45 days or so. We just did unit walkthroughs on one of those assets that are under contract today. And it was better than I had hoped. So I was very excited to see that. There's certainly lots of incredible opportunities.
The unit walkthrough day is always the big day,
Yeah.
because in these big, commercial deals, you get financials, and, we invest in markets that we know very, very well. So we have some general sense of, what a building looks like, what we expect the inside might look like, but you don't really get to see much of it until you're under contract. And we tend to be, I think, pleasantly surprised. We tend to underwrite, so
Very
hopelessly conservatively. And then the walkthrough day is always very fun.
Yeah. So we walked through a couple of units, and they were ADA compliant units. And frequently those are the units that get shown because those are the units that are vacant or whatever. And then as we were walking through, we realized most of the units are ADA compliant. And they even have some units that are doing assisted living that's very lucrative and a win-win, just things that it was impossible for us to know. We saw there was an assisted living provider on the rent roll. We assumed that there was staff living there, not clients. And we're like, man, this is a really cool model. We could expand and lean into this whole building is handicapped accessible. Who knows? This could be some sort of, solution to the problem of how do you have affordable assisted living. So there's just a stampede of black swans, as we call it, when we're doing those walkthroughs. Lots of pleasant surprises today. And there's just a really good pace to Fund 2. We haven't even had a chance to do that webinar on that asset that we walked today.
Yeah.
So we better get around to that. There's been one deal after another to launch. So Fund 2 is really good. Recommend you jump in while you can if you are interested in investing.
Yep. And of course, for any investment opportunity, speak with your personal advisors, your attorneys, CPAs, those that you trust before making an investment decision.
Yep.
Financial freedom through real estate is happening in just a few weeks. We're super excited. It is in LA. There is also a virtual option. Both Nick and I will be there. Rachel will be there. A couple other members of our team will be there. We are just super excited to be in person with so many people that we've built relationships with over the years, and so many people that we haven't yet had a chance to meet because of COVID and travel restrictions and those sorts of things. Very excited about the opportunity to present at this conference. I'll be speaking about mindset and recession. So very excited to bring a lot of the principles from Timeless to that stage. And then we have our real life event. So this summer we stayed super busy bringing people to Rochester, a very exciting time. Our inaugural real life event was, truly amazing. I don't think I'll ever forget it.
You got to get married all over again.
That's what I kind of said. I told the Hilton, I want this to be the finest wedding you've put on the entire 3 days, because I want everyone to have a really good time. We're big believers in the integrated life. So I want people to come and learn about real estate and advance their financial freedom and network, but I also want them to have a really good time, right? We all only get so many hours in the day, so many days in the year. And so trying to mix the two of those. And then by Sunday night, I was like, it really does feel like a wedding. This is really cool.
Pretty good.
So super excited about doing it next year, September 15th through the 17th. So mark your calendars. And then right after we did our real life event, we did what we're calling the Operators Summit. So we brought a smaller group to town of our peers. So fellow active real estate investors, active operators. That was also a lot of fun. I'll be totally honest, a lot more like kind of imposter syndrome of, these are the experts in the field.
Pretty cool group of people to get together.
Yeah. And that's something we intend to do annually as well. If, the big change or the big goal we have in our lives at this point is to really change property management, asset management, and private equity. And we know we can't do that alone. We have to do that with many, many, many other operators. And the way to do that is to spread our business model so that they take it to their markets and they're doing deals that are completely outside of us. And we're just, spreading this different way of doing business. And I really feel like that Operator Summit was, the first day of that.
Absolutely.
So those are all of our announcements. Let's jump in. This was our credibility slide probably about 18 months ago.
75 million AUM.
Yeah.
Pretty big deal.
Yeah. So at that time, we had about 35 million in sales with our real estate team. We had less than 100 million in assets under management. We had only raised like a little over 8 figures, a little over 10 million. We were still working on our ground up construction, the Nest. That is still ongoing. Phase 2 is almost done. We are working on breaking ground and getting our loan approved for phase 3.
But by the way, we haven't added more acreage because it's a $40 million project today. So we haven't added more acreage.
Went up.
Just the cost went up by 30% in the last 18 months.
But we added like a leasing office, a maintenance office, a park, a dog park, a clubhouse. Our vision for that community has grown as we've owned it. That's one of what I have found to be like a cool thing about construction is that it kind of grows up with you. And so, when we first started it, we were like, we need to just keep this as lean as possible, both from an economic standpoint and from a maintenance standpoint. And today we're like, we can do more here. Let's add more value. Let's do more, because you only get one chance at construction. And then once we have those amenities, we get to have them for the next many decades. And then here's our stats today. So last year we had over 75 million in sales. I think we'll probably hit 100 million this year.
So, yeah. I think we'll definitely hit 100 million.
Yeah, we have about 300 million in assets under management, inching closer to that $500 million mark. That's our next big goal.
Girl, we just blew past the third of $1 billion.
I know, but I like half.
Let's take a breath when we get to 333.
Yep. We've raised about 50 million in capital. There's our ground up construction project, and we have about 40 million in assets that we own. Timeless. So we love timeless things. We are not people that tend to follow like fast fashion or anything like that. I don't know where we kind of came up with that set of values, but it certainly presents itself in real estate. So we believe in timeless fashion, that a nice black suit or a black dress, something that, looked good 30 years ago, looks good today, will probably look good 30 years in the future. Timeless friendships, that's probably like the most important one on here. We're just so much more interested in developing few deep relationships than many shallow relationships. There's something about that timeless friendship when you just look at someone and you know that they know what you're talking about before you ever have to say it because they've been there forever. I kind of get that feeling. Like that's the feeling I want you to be thinking about as we're going into talking about timeless real estate principles. Timeless assets, of course, goes with real estate, and then timeless wisdom. That's what we hope that we've put together over the decade plus that we've been investing, and that's what we hope we're sharing tonight.
So what is this about? We're going to talk a little bit about single family investing, multifamily investing, active investing, passive investing, making the world a better place. This is a really broad message. We had someone at our real life conference who came to us. We did a bunch of troubleshooting, stayed up late, several nights. And one person, they said, okay, I bought an older, small multifamily property in a really small rural community, and it needs a bunch of repairs. And what do you think about this situation? And just anyone on this call, like maybe pop in the chat. What do you think we thought about that situation? Just from the few values you've heard from us so far. What were some assessments we could probably draw knowing nothing else about that property at all? So was able to get this. Do you have a succession plan? That's a really good one. Yep. So management is really tough in these locations. Really, really
Well, that
tough.
question came in beforehand, but
Oh,
it's still a very good
That's a really
question.
good- yeah. There it is. Is this something that's worth owning in the long term? Is this something that's worth owning in the long term? You nailed it there, Mark. And that's exactly what I asked him. And he said, well, no, I think this is more of like a stepping stone type asset. And I'm like, well, then you should probably step forward. It's he's like, well, I've only owned it a few months. I'm like, well, how much have you learned in those few months? He's like, a lot. And that's exactly right. We helped him. He was in a really bad roofing contract. And I helped him get out of that roofing contract and get a full refund of his money. And he's planning on making some foundation repairs that probably didn't make any sense. So there's a bunch of like technical components to it. But at the end of the day, it really is that simple. You can probably analyze just about any investment opportunity with just a few simple questions. It is not any more complicated than that. And these are the same questions that Ray Dalio or Warren Buffett would ask. You could be asking about investing in moon juice on Mars, and you could probably just say, is this something that is worth owning in the long term? And you'd almost immediately know if this is a good investment opportunity or not. So we hope that this resonates with you and brings you a lot of really tangible value. This is not
this is not the mindset tonight.
Yeah,
it might feel like mindset, but it's not.
That's right.
It's true. We believe, and we've lived it. We have built a business plan around these principles, and it has reaped us, tremendous success.
Yeah. Yep.
The first thing is absolutely find your why. So real estate is hard. There's a lot of exuberance in real estate, maybe not so much over the last couple of months with interest rates and people are a little more afraid than they have been in the past, but certainly over the last several years, it looked like everything was easy and everyone was making money and deals were just everywhere and capital was everywhere.
Springtime.
And then people, would inevitably hit small bumps in the road, big bumps in the road. They happen every single day. You just have to go into it knowing that they will happen. And the why is what gets someone through. So like, as I was walking into the office today, I thought that my evolution as an entrepreneur has been that it's Monday morning. Our baby Abram has been in daycare for about 2 weeks. So Monday has like a different feel than when I was bringing him to the office as recently as 2 weeks ago. I feel unencumbered. I feel ready to work. I'm excited. And I thought, what problems can I solve today? What problems do I get the privilege of solving today? And that's what has to happen in real estate. And the gasoline that comes for the tank that leads to a question of what problems do I get to solve today is knowing your why. It's different for everyone. For most people, it starts as financial freedom. It starts as time freedom, decision freedom, the ability to maybe cut back on work or pick a different assignment at work or move to a different job. Then I think for a lot of people, it becomes, what can I do for others? And, for us, it's now, how can we just change the whole industry? Like the deals are fun, the relationships are great. Those are the things that keep us going in the morning. But the thing that will make this interesting for decades to come is how can we just improve the entire industry? So your why changes over time. And we take back our lives the moment we are no longer a slave to money.
Yes.
The moment we can show up to a meeting and really say what we truly think is best for that meeting without having fears about, not getting a promotion or losing a job. The moment we're able to really say, I'm going to take that time for, vacation with my family, or, we recently had Nick's mom pass away and we took a lot of time away from the office to say, we are no longer slaves to money, and spending these last few weeks and months with her is the most important thing we can do right now. And that's what we want for everyone. Like, we wake up every day and we think, how can we help as many people as possible feel this free? And getting the freedom is we had a little error pop up. It looks like we're still working. Margaret, we're still good?
Okay, great.
Okay, perfect. Our Zoom popped up like Zoom has crashed and we're like,
what's going on there.
Yeah. Anyway, it looks like it didn't.
Yeah.
The why is what carries one through. So think about your why. That's a bigger question than you can probably answer right now, but always be thinking about that and always be going back to that as you inevitably hit bumps in the road. Start now.
So people get stuck in analysis paralysis, and that's something that people talk about all the time. Take it another step higher. One of our mentors really kind of commanded us to take action by saying, if you're at a crossroads and you're not sure what to do with the steering wheel, the best way to figure it out is put the pedal to the metal and just be ready to do a U-turn, because you will find out very quickly if you are going in the wrong direction. But if you just sit there and wait, 10 or 20 years could go by and you might still be waiting there. It's truly that simple. If you don't take action right now, you will not get closer to clarity on your direction. And that's something that's a little bit uncomfortable. It's something that we realize as we get kind of higher and higher up the food chain. I don't know how to describe it. Spending more and more time with people that make really, really big decisions. And it's kind of scary, but these people, they really don't know any more than the rest of us what the right decision is.
They're still human.
Yeah. They have merely gotten really, really skilled and really, really comfortable at the art of course correction, of ready, fire, aim, of taking immediate action and then measuring and checking and figuring out, are we going the right direction? But when people that are launching, new companies and leading countries make a big decision, they don't have access to any magical information that the rest of us, don't like. They're just more comfortable with this muscle. So you have to start now. So if you want to, be an active real estate investor, I'm sorry, but you have to go out and buy a property. You're going to have to buy a property in order to figure out whether or not you want to buy a property. I'm going to say that a second time. You have to buy property in order to figure out whether or not you want to buy property. That's just how it is. And that's really scary because real estate is a big investment and it's not very liquid and you could get kind of stuck. But what's the value of your time? What's the value of opportunity? Opportunity cost is the biggest cost that any of us face. And it's something that we frequently ignore. And it's not just the opportunity of making some money on a property. That's nothing. What's really interesting about wealth is the person that you have to become in order to attract that wealth. Wealth is just an inevitable consequence, a side effect of personal development, of becoming that person that attracts that wealth. I know that might sound like a little bit of woo-woo nonsense, but it is 100% true. That's exactly how it works. And anybody that we, get the privilege to interact with as you get to these kind of higher echelons, like, it gets more and more true. You spend just a couple of minutes with this person, you're just like, wow, like I am so drawn to this person. It's clear how they have been so successful because wealth is just drawn to this person. But you have to get started, and it's going to take you 10 years to get there. But that clock doesn't start ticking until you act right now. It's a measured risk. Don't bet your entire net worth or all of your liquidity on that first investment. Our first investment.
That's our next slide. Yeah.
Was
one thing I want to add, and then we'll wrap up on this slide, is a really life-changing concept for me is, let's assume someone is, let's say 40 years old, and let's assume they have 40 years left in their life. The good Lord willing, I hope they have 80 years left in their life, but let's assume that. So if they wait 1 year before making a decision, they might think, oh, I've lost the year between 40 and 41. But that's not actually true, because life is compounded experience and connection and resources. So they really lost the last of their most successful years.
Yes.
So maybe that's the year from, who knows, maybe 69 to 70 before they, kind of put away all the deals and retire and just, sort of go into like a true retirement. And the person that they become at that last year, say when they're 69 years old, is set from the decisions that they make when they're 40 years old. Or you can go back further in time, or you can start at 10 years old, you can start at 20 years old, but it's losing that final year of productivity from postponing decisions. And that really became like life-changing for me, that it's all about, compounded growth. And you want to have the most amount of growth as early as possible to get to those final productive years. And those are like the most productive years in anyone's life or in anyone's, certainly the economic journey. And like, once I was able to wrap my mind around that, then all of a sudden there was no more comfort in waiting. It was like, oh my gosh, like I have to start, because I'm working toward those future years where I will be so much more productive and so much more capable because of what I do today. That was a life-changing concept for me. I hope that I hope I was able to describe that well.
The stats you saw at the beginning of the slide deck of how we've had this like crazy growth in hundreds of millions in alum and stuff like that. You might think to yourself, like, that seems unrelatable or something like that. That's because of this. That's because we bought a $35,000 house.
This is it. I mean, isn't it like really ugly?
That might have been after we were done renovating it, actually.
I'm fairly certain it was
because the mulch is done. And
because it was February in Oklahoma. So that's what February in Oklahoma looks like. There's no snow, but it's frigid cold. There's no grass. The skies are just this like ugly gray color. So this home would have been, beautiful come May when, the trees and everything had leaves on it. But that's what it looked like when we were done with our renovation.
In technology, this is called a minimum viable product. So you can like Google that concept or whatever. So we were expecting to get this big payday from our tech career and our medicine career, and that payday, didn't come along. We were thinking we would invest that payday into real estate, and we bought this basically the smallest house we could find to learn by doing, because that's exactly what you do in technology. If you're trying to build this really big software system, you start by building one tiny little component of it, or kind of the first most basic model or version of it, and test it and see how it goes. Does it feel good? Does it make sense or not? So your first step, it does not need to be a big step, and that's something that really paralyzes people. What is the smallest step you can take right now that's stopping you from getting to that goal? If you need to improve your health and you need to get a gym membership, like, send an email right now to the gym, go sign up online, whatever. Like, you don't even have to go to the gym, just sign up for the gym. And that's one little barrier that's going to take out of the way for you to go to the gym. If you want to invest in real estate, do you need to get into a relationship with an agent or with a lender? Go send an email. It's so much more valuable for you to just take immediate action than listening to whatever we have to say in the rest of this presentation. Just take,
and then our attendance just plummets, and then we're talking to ourselves the rest of the night. Love it. I totally agree. And one of the things that we hear over and over and over is oftentimes people who are in committed relationships or marriages, like one partner's really excited, or at least tentatively excited, and the other is not.
Tentatively excited. That's a really good term. I like that.
Things I've seen some other people have success. I want to get started, but the other person, and it as far as we can see, it does not follow any sort of gender roles or anything. It is truly just random. But starting small can be a way that everyone's comfortable. So this was truly our first home. So this was the home that I lived in before we got married. So that felt very comfortable to me because I had lived there. And then this was our first, what we call intentional investment property. And you can see it's not very beautiful. This was after we laid all of the tile, we painted it, we put the deck door in. We did not redo the kitchen.
These are the after renovation photos, by the way, not the before.
Yeah, we did not redo the kitchen because we didn't know how at that time.
And we ran out of money.
But we did all this tile, the windows, everything ourselves. And basically Nick was like, Elaine, we could like lose it all and we'd be fine. And I'm like, that sounds about right. Like, let's try it, right? Let's buy it. I feel like I can probably lay some tile. I've rolled a paint roller before. I have never put in a deck door, but it seems kind of intuitive. You have to get the door in place and then get the trim going.
It was a little less intuitive than we thought.
It was really hard. I think it took us like 10 hours to get it like all lined up.
It was like 20 degrees. We're laying 1,000 square feet of ceramic tile. We're like, okay, this is pretty time consuming.
Yeah. But we started, and I look at this house and I'm just filled with fondness for it because it is what led to it, going back to that, because we did this, we're able to do the things now 12 years later that we're able to do. And that, if you can imagine, if we waited a year to do this, then we only would have had 11 years to get where we are. If we had 2 years, we only would have 10 years. But start now and start small. Do hard things.
So yeah, we had alluded to installing ceramic tile. There was no working heat in the house, and it was there's like active ice storms. But we just said we would show up and we'd work on the house every day. So that's exactly what we did. We went and worked our day jobs. Elaine was miscarrying our first child and in med school. And after a day of med school, she would show up to the job site with me after a day at the office, and we would just work on whatever we could work on. I mean, YouTube was kind of new at the time, but there was some good videos out there. We hired someone to do the new roof. We hired someone to do the new furnace and air conditioning. things that we shouldn't take on ourselves. We didn't take on ourselves, but we painted the whole house, did all new flooring, we installed, we did everything we could do ourselves.
Yeah.
And then a little bit more. We probably shouldn't have done a few things, like we set a toilet, and that toilet was wobbly for about 5 years before we had someone redo it and level it properly.
Yep.
But we just committed to doing the hard thing, the thing that other people weren't willing to do. This was a VA foreclosure. It had been, vacant for many years, for like half a decade, since the '08 crash, since before the '08 crash. We had to extend closing 6 times on this house because the VA kept trying to sell us this house without having title to it. And we had a really good agent who was really familiar with these things. We just kind of trusted that agent and followed their advice. And he said, nope, I think this is a great deal and you should hang on. And eventually they will come up with a title, but they're never going to want to extend more than 30 days. And even if it takes them a year to come up with a title, you should wait for it. So we just committed to doing the hard things. And
if you're able to look at the screen right now, you'll see that we didn't do the tile in a traditional tile format. We did it in kind of the offset. And we did that because we didn't exactly know how to lay tile. And this pattern is much more forgiving than if you're trying to, look down the room and get that perfect tile, perfect square.
It was pretty good at first, but then I think by like square foot 800, Elaine was like running the tiles through the tile saw, just like 3 at a time. And it's like, you go.
Yeah, I'm like, Nick, I think these ones at the end are all, I remember it very vividly. I'm like, I think these are all 6 inches and 6 1/4 inches. And you're like, no, you need to measure them one by one because some are 6 1/4, some are 6 3/8, some are 6 1/2. And I'm like, nope, you are going to get 6 1/4 tiles. You're going to lay them.
And it looked pretty good, actually. It turned out pretty good. Do the hard things. Don't try to avoid the hard work. We see a lot of people in real estate who celebrate trying to like put together a deal where they don't do anything. And that's not interesting to us. We don't think that like Mark Zuckerberg, or Steve Jobs celebrates somehow being like a passive owner of a business. Like, commit, be all in and bring as much value as you can possibly bring, and you will be rewarded for doing the hard thing.
Do right things is our next principle. So right there at the top is the investment thesis that we have for single family homes. It's what I spoke to at the top of the hour because I have it memorized. So we buy high quality, solid B-class homes in stable, older neighborhoods with great schools, cash flow positive with a high likelihood of appreciation or the ability to weather a storm, proud to own it on day one and excited to own it for the next 20 plus years. Those 3 sentences, if you take nothing else away from what you're listening to tonight, those 3 sentences are the basis of every single real estate acquisition we have ever had. And I don't see a future where that changes.
I agree.
Maybe it does. As I've gotten a little bit older, I've learned to kind of never say never, but I don't see a time where that would change for right now.
We've done a little bit of B+, a little bit of A-. We might do some A in the future, but I still like B better. There's really nothing I would change about this thesis. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than this.
Absolutely. In terms of the business practices that we have, we've always been big believers of putting the needs of others first,
Yes.
Answering the telephone, practicing radical transparency, focusing on retention, and those things like have really crystallized in our business. So, at the time when we were making this presentation, we had these kind of, amorphous ideas of what our business values were. And then since then, we went through a very rigorous process of defining our business core values. And we needed to do that to grow and to scale, to take the vision that we have for our business and translate it into not just a few residents, but hundreds and potentially thousands of residents, not just a few team members, but dozens of team members. We have our core values. These are like really big posters. It's kind of hard to tell how big they are, but we have all 7 of them on these beautiful posters and really try to live them every single day to instill in our team what the right things are so that they are doing those things regardless of whether we are there or not. That there's behaving when the boss is around, and then there's behaving when the boss isn't around. And we want our team to know to do the right things regardless of whether we're there or not, regardless of whether we will ever know about that decision or not. And so we have to translate that. But it's always been like just really I guess I would call them like simple sort of Midwestern values.
Let's talk about this for 1 second. So we just launched our tech fund, right? Let's go down this checklist because again, it is not that complicated. It's really simple. So put the needs of others first. And I guess I'll put in transparent revenue model. So we're doing this fund. We don't have any fees, which is extraordinarily unusual. There's lots of other people that are kind of participating in Lotus. We're the only group that's not collecting any fees. That's not saying anything negative about the other people. Just that's a choice that that we make because we're going to put the needs of other people ahead of our own. And everyone's asking us like, why would you do this? Why would you go raise tens of millions of dollars for free? Well, Fund 4 is going to be a $500 million fund. They are working with, sovereign wealth funds and stuff. And we just said, next time you take a plane trip out to Dubai and you're meeting with one of these $100 million commitment type, players, we'd love to tag along. That'd be something that'd be very interesting to us.
We're always thinking about how we can spread opportunity. So how can we be a conduit through which we can get that access and then share it with others? So Lotus is an institutional grade fund, which means like normal people, like all of us on this call, can't typically invest in Lotus. It has to be through an institution. So we created an institution, the Black Swan Technology Fund 1, to be able to participate in that and then share it with everyone else.
Yeah, I have no doubt that like at some point in the future, we will profit handsomely from the fact that we've put the needs of other people first. And we're very transparent about how we profit from things. We answer the phone. I've had tons of phone calls with investors who have questions and then focus on retention referral. The whole reason we're doing the tech fund at all is because one of the kind of top feedback items we've gotten is lots of people have invested, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars with us over the years. And they're like, gosh, I'm kind of heavy into real estate. I'd love to get into something else. Is there something other than real estate that you can offer? And so that's exactly what we did is how can we just shower more abundance on our existing community in a way that gives them a diversification of portfolio allocation essentially. So I think we nailed those core values right there with the tech fund. And so I hope you can see how this applies to real estate, but it also applies to technology. I would even say, many of those top bullet points even kind of apply to the core business thesis for Lotus as well.
Mm-hmm. This is a great time to kind of answer one of the questions. Actually, I'll wait until we get to infinite rate of return. One of our questions was, does the technology fund allow an infinite rate of return? There have been a couple of really good questions that we will get to. If you all have questions, definitely put them in chat. It's been kind of a quieter group tonight, but we love questions. We love weaving them into the presentation or having a chance to answer them at the end. Grow fast. So we are big believers that I think it probably comes from medicine, that the fastest or kind of the best way to learn is to learn quickly, right? So, your first day of medical school, they just give you like this overwhelming amount of information to learn with just this like quiet expectation. Like, of course you will know it tomorrow. Of course you will know it for the test. Same thing with, first day of clinicals. Of course you're going to see patients. Of course you're going to collect a history. First day of residency. Of course you're going to make the plan. Not just that plan, but you're going to see every patient. For me, my first day of residency was in the psychiatric emergency department. And the expectation was that I would just see every patient that came in that day. And I would have plenty of support and a senior resident to report to, but that was just the expectation. There was no, well, you'll learn one today and we'll talk about it and debrief and think about it and maybe, write what we've learned or anything, and then see 2 tomorrow and then 3 the next day. Nope, you're just going to do all of it today. And it's going to be really terrible, but very quickly you will have a set of competence and comfort here. And that's exactly what happened. And so we've taken that principle and applied it to real estate, that by growing quickly, we have found that allows us to be more in the market, to know more about all of our deals, because we're able to know, well, what are the patterns that we're seeing? It's easier to see a pattern in 10 or 100 than it is in 1 or 2. We're able to get the best contracts with, say, our vendors. We're able to troubleshoot problems very quickly and realize, okay, this sink is, this faucet leaks a little bit. Okay, let's change that for all of them very quickly. Versus if we're doing, say, like 1 renovation a year or 2 renovations a year, it might take years to figure out that like a particular faucet, for example, isn't the best faucet. So we're big believers in growing quickly. Grow fast is the principle. You can see there the trajectory that we've had since 2011. You want to go over? And this is the number of units acquired, not the number of total units.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in podcast mode, you can pull up the slide and see, we were, kind of growing by a unit per year for a couple of years there. And all of a sudden 2 units, 7 units, 14 units, 47 units, 165 units, 235 units. And we'll probably grow by, at least 500 units this year. Some people, they see growth as like a scary thing. But
this is a different way of looking at our trajectory.
Yeah. So this is our net worth growth over time. How does a child learn to speak? Do they learn like one new word each day? No, it's an exponential growth curve. Like they're kind of playing around with their tongue, which our youngest is starting to kind of babble a little bit, and it's so cool. And one day he's just going to start like using words. And our next youngest has gone from like 50 words to 5,000 words in, I swear, just a few weeks, because that's how humans grow.
He's exploring responding with sentences, which is really cute from a 2-year-old. Like, Micah, do you want a peanut butter roll up? Yes, I do want a peanut butter roll up. It's so sweet.
Yeah. Syntax and everything. Humans all life, like a tree does not spread seeds linearly. One tree does not make one more tree. A tree makes 10,000 more trees. Life is an exponential growth process. Linear growth is this very synthetic human constraint that's kind of a byproduct of like the Industrial Revolution, of like an assembly line and stuff. So linear growth is a very inefficient way to grow. Constantly be challenging yourself. How can I double, triple, quadruple, the size of my portfolio, or whatever effort is that you're undertaking this year or in the next quarter? Set big growth targets for yourself. I guess for some reason, I'm not a big fan of the 10X rule, but I do think like the 2X rule. What is the most immediate step to double whatever I'm doing right now? And I would say in technology, 2X is a common target. Growth is a pretty steep trajectory in technology, and I would say 2X is a very common target to immediately hit in tech. So grow quickly. It's way more fun, and honestly, it's way easier when you get in the business of growing as a soul, as a human being, as a biological being, as a business, as a real estate portfolio, whatever. It is way easier. Like if we're out calling people saying, hey, we're buying real estate, do you think that we get more people calling us saying, hey, would you like to buy real estate? We do. It is way easier to grow exponentially than it is to grow linearly.
Absolutely. Another takeaway from this slide is these early years. So the early years look really slow, right? If you're able to just, put your eye on this slide really quickly, I guess I'll move my mouse over here. These early years here, it almost looks like no growth at all. We do a lot of calls with folks in this situation, and they feel demoralized or frustrated or confused, just all sorts of negative feelings. But you can see once a little bit of space comes under the curve, then it just really takes off, and the space begets more space under the curve. And so, another way to look at this slide is with excitement, that if you happen to be in that earlier stage where it looks flat, know that that's not flat. That's the runway. That's where you're gaining momentum to get into the air, and stay focused. Stay focused on growth, both financial growth, but the learning growth that comes through this, and try to stay out of that feeling of confusion and upset or stagnation. Ask yourself high quality questions. I've heard from people time and time again that growth is an exponential curve. How can I have an exponential curve? Where am I on my exponential curve? How can I take the next step? Ask high quality questions to get through this early period instead of getting stuck in the feeling of, well, it will always be flat, because that's generally not true. When we, share these stats with other very successful real estate investors, entrepreneurs, everyone has this graph. Everyone. There's nothing special about this.
This is a compounding interest chart. That's all this is. So if you plot it out like Warren Buffett's net worth growth over time, it would look the exact same as this. He's actually made the vast majority of his net worth just in the last 15 years, because that's how compounding interest works. That's just how the mathematics works. So there's nothing magical about us. We have merely compounded our real estate wealth over time and done it consistently. And this is the inevitable outcome.
Absolutely. Scale infinitely. So this really is, I would have to say, if there's like one thing that separates our business model from most other real estate business models, particularly at the fund or the syndication level, It's that we scale infinitely. So what we have found is that many active real estate investors, like say a kind of a mom and pop that buy some single family homes or some small multifamily, they will often scale infinitely because they hold for a long time. And maybe along the way, they learn about cash out refi, and then they're able to, keep acquiring more assets. But particularly at the syndication or the fund level, the model is to sell after 3 years, year and a half, just kind of crazy numbers.
Mhm.
And that is kind of antithetical to our investment thesis, which is to get to a cash out refi, to get to a place where there's $0 left in that deal. Then you're dividing by zero. That's where the infinite rate of return comes from, and then scale infinitely. So we'll go over a couple of examples here. I also find that for folks that maybe are very embedded in kind of a typical syndication or fund model, this is the piece of our business plan that's the most confusing to them. So I just encourage you, if you're kind of in that camp, to try to look at it with a clear mind, a set of fresh eyes, because once it clicks, it makes perfect sense. And sometimes it will click in like a presentation like this, or when we're on the phone with someone, or they'll send us a message of never quite made sense. And then all of a sudden it makes sense. And wow, that's like magic. And we're like, well, not really magic, just, bank loans. But it feels magical to take one bucket of money and buy assets after assets after assets. Merlin asked an excellent question. Does the tech fund allow for an infinite investment model? And the tech fund does not. I'll let Nick speak to that since he's our tech expert. But this is an example of how tech is a diversification play, away from real estate.
Yeah. So let's go back to our kind of critical truths here, fundamental truths of, is this an asset that you'd want to have forever? And in the technology game, there's really no such thing as an asset that you want to hold forever. That's just how it works. The Black Swan Technology Fund does focus on an exceptionally long hold period for the tech industry. So it's not uncommon to hold a tech company for like 18 months, extremely short hold periods of, hey, here's this new tech that's coming out. We want to get in front of this thing. We want to, do a quick flip. So we're talking a minimum 5-year hold period for the technology fund, which might as well be an indefinite hold period in the tech world. That's just kind of the
think about how much technology has changed in 5 years, right? But it's during that time that we're growing the management team, putting a new CEO in place, a new CTO, doing all of the marketing, the back end advancements with like legal and accounting. And it takes time to really grow those things and to grow them well.
Yeah. So not an indefinite hold period, because that's just not really how the tech industry works. But I would say it's kind of the closest thing there is to an indefinite hold period in the tech industry. And this is one of the reasons why we kind of got out of the tech industry and got into real estate, because we saw the intrinsic value of sticks and bricks and dirt and the kind of disruption resistance, particularly of residential real estate. And that is one reason why there's sort of I would say a higher IRR, so to speak, in the tech fund, is it's a shorter hold period, kind of a quicker return type investment play, whereas you're investing in something that's really safe and kind of boring and dependable long term with the real estate fund.
This is an example of how to get to an infinite rate of return. So this is an example from probably about 18 months ago. So at that time, it was pretty common to be able to acquire a single family home in our market for about $250,000 and rent it for $2,000 per month. Today, I would say those numbers are probably more like $300,000 for acquisition and maybe $2,400 or $2,500 for the rental rates. You can see the ratio stays very similar, although the numbers have changed. That's an example of how the tactics change very often. For us, we're looking at changing our tactics quarterly, but the principle stays the same. That's an excellent example of that.
I like that interest rate. Those were good
interest rates.
Yep.
Yeah. So a typical loan at that time was an 80% LTV at a 3.5% interest rate with a 25-year amortization. We did this with a commercial loan, not a conventional loan in this example, to show that most people, when they get to say 10 or 12 pieces of real estate, they're not able to get conventional loans anymore. They have to get commercial loans, which tend to not be as good as conventional loans. So we wanted to give this example of, even with a commercial loan, this is still extremely possible. What we have found is that over the last, I would say maybe like 2 years, commercial lending is actually way better than conventional lending, which is not the typical wisdom that has been, in the marketplace for several decades. But like, for example, we are doing like a $9 million cash out refi for Fund 1 on a portfolio of single family homes. And our interest rate there is is it 5? I think it's 5.1.
Yeah.
Were you thinking 4.8?
4.85 is the number that I had in my mind. I don't know if that's 100%.
I have both of those numbers in my mind. So this is not a fund performance call. So no one quote us there. Let's call it 5, because Nick and I both had 4.8 in our minds, but I also had 5.1. Whereas a conventional loan right now is like 7.5, 7.25. So commercial lending is just great right now. That's a little bit of an aside. So a down payment on this property would be about $50,000. That would lead to a 34% total annualized rate of return, or 7% cash on cash rate of return. We always target 3.4 annual organic appreciation in our pro formas. That comes from, if you look at the last 100 years of real estate transactions in non-rural areas, it comes out to 3.4% over long time periods. So that's the good years, the bad years, everything in between. Obviously, the last several years have been, double-digit appreciation in many markets. We don't factor that into our pro formas at all. We factor in the number that has held true for the last 100 years. We also put in a 3% annual increase in both income and expenses, and then no forced appreciation in this example, to show how a forced appreciation model is much easier to get to a cash out refi, to get to that infinite rate of return, because you're forcing the appreciation very quickly through renovations. But this model still works in kind of a vanilla type scenario. Yeah,
a base hit scenario. I would do this deal an infinite number of times if I could.
Well, you can.
Yeah.
Can I go through the numbers?
Yeah. So we always, try not to have, a big, kind of eye glazing over a grid of numbers, but I do think that the numbers are critical, that you understand this. So in year one, your returns aren't that exciting. 34% annualized rate of return and a 7% cash on cash rate of return. I mean, that is pretty darn exciting. Let's be clear about that.
Far beats the stock market.
Yeah, it beats the heck out of the stock market. But because those income and expense numbers go up each year, but your loan payment doesn't, it gets much more exciting. So you see that the value of the property starts compounding. So your annual cash flow appreciation, debt pay down go up. Your cash flow goes from $300 a month to $340 a month to $380. At the end, you're making almost $500 a month just at the end of 5 years, with really, really modest numbers here. You go from 34% annualized rate of return to 42% annualized rate of return, from 7.3% cash on cash to 11% cash on cash. So it goes from like a kind of interesting deal to just an insanely good deal. It goes from kind of a base hit deal to a home run deal, very in a very boring, steady, and predictable way. So this is, again, not assuming crazy rent growth and stuff like we've seen lately. It's not assuming double-digit appreciation like we've seen lately. And when you get to the end, you have accrued a staggering amount of equity, enough that you can actually hit a full cash out refi, and you can repeat it all over again. That's when this thing gets really interesting, because now you're in an infinite rate of return. This thing's had a house baby, or a golden goose. We've got fun little phrases we use to describe it. And this is just the most boring, simple scenario I could possibly imagine. And you're able to get to an infinite rate of return in short order.
Yeah. So if you look at this, in year one, it is our investment belief that real estate far outpaces the stock market, because that total annualized rate of return in this example would be like 34%. And that's factoring in cash flow, debt pay down, and appreciation. Again, we talked about how appreciation for us is over that like 100-year time period. So that's really good. It gets even better, like Nick described. And for many people, this is great. And they just keep holding, and they own the real estate for a long time. And that's really good. We're big believers in an indefinite hold period. But this isn't quite good enough, because when we started investing, we didn't have unlimited amounts of liquidity to just keep getting the next down payment, the next down payment, the next down payment. We had to ask ourselves, how do we take a relatively small bucket of money and keep buying, right? If one of our thesis if a part of our thesis is to grow quickly, well, how do we actually do that? Oh, we have to get that bucket of money back to be able to go buy the next thing. So remember, from this slide, the down payment was $50,000. There will be some closing costs and things like that in there. It's not uncommon for especially a commercial loan to be able to close a commercial loan like this for maybe like $2,000 in closing
Very
costs.
low.
A conventional loan, will be much more expensive. So let's say 50,000. So when you're on this slide, over on the far right, you can see in your first year, your total annualized profit is 17,000, and that's from cash flow, debt pay down, and appreciation. The next year is 18,000. So now we're at 35,000. The next year is 19,000. So now we're at 55,000, right? This is a base hit deal. There is nothing fancy dancy about this deal. And at the end of year 3, the total profit from this deal is $55,000. The down payment is $50,000. So now you can do a cash out refi and recoup the entire investment, buy the next property, and carry on. And then all of a sudden, there is no cash on cash rate of return because there's no denominator in the cash, right? Cash on cash is cash flow per month or per year divided by total cash invested. If total cash invested is 0, then cash on cash is infinite. And the total annualized rate of return is also infinite because that's divided by total cash invested. So I think this also highlights why that initial year 1 cash on cash rate of return has never been that exciting to us. It's important to us that a property cash flows for security reasons, not for wealth building reasons, because who really cares if something is, say, a 7% cash on cash, or today, it might be more like a 4% cash on cash. 5 years ago, it was probably more like a 10 or 12% cash on cash. If in 3 years' time, it will be an infinite cash on cash rate of return, and even faster if there's forced appreciation. This whole cycle can happen in 3 months with skilled renovation, working with the bank, having the financing lined up right from the get-go. This is the basis for our entire business model. Every deal we've ever done with our own capital, every deal we've ever done with investor capital, the Black Swan Fund 1, the Black Swan Fund 2, talked about why it is not the basis of the investment thesis for the tech fund. But I mean, we think if we have something that's like really, truly life-changing to the average investor, this is it.
Yes.
This is it. Because even high income earners, it's hard to shave $50,000 a year off of your income by the time you pay taxes and take the kids on a couple of vacations, those sorts of things. It's hard to put aside, say, 50 or more thousand per year to keep buying. And that only gets you like one property per year. If you want to get that exponential curve, you have to have a lot of liquidity. And that's another time where people are like, I don't know what to do. I'm saving $3,000 per month, or I am saving $5,000 per month, and I feel really proud of myself, but that's really hard. And that's only going to get me one property per year or one investment per year. I'm like, okay, well, how do you get your previous generation investments to buy your new investments? And once that happens, I think once that clicks for people, it's just like addicting of how can I do this? We like fondly look at our properties and we're like, oh, that house had these house babies, and then those houses had these house babies. Like we have like a family tree of all of our properties. And it's just amazing. So I can't speak enough about this thesis.
If you understand this spreadsheet, you understand our whole private equity fund model too, right? So hopefully you can see how anyone on this call can go out and buy one single family home and run this playbook. And the numbers are going to look different in your market. Like I just did a one-on-one coaching call with someone the other day. They're in Florida and it's $500K to buy a house there, but they can probably rent it for about $3,000 per month. Like those numbers are not actually that different from these numbers. That's just the numbers tend to normalize across markets. If you're in Southern California, I'm sorry, the numbers just don't work in your area.
There's a reason why we live in the Midwest.
That's right. But it does work in many places. So if you understand this model, you can go out and you can buy a single family home and you can do this, but you also see how this works for our private equity fund. So when we say that we target a 5-year time frame to return capital, here's the 5 years. And when we say it's never taken us more than 3 years, you can see why it's taken.
I had not thought about that. Like there's year 3. I'm like, well, let's just stop at year 3.
Yeah. So there you go. So even if there was like a dip in the market, 5 years is enough time for the market to probably come back up. Most economic cycles are not that long or not longer than 5 years. And in that time, we've probably, gotten enough cash flow appreciation, debt pay down that we can hit a cash out refi. So that's how we can say with such supreme certainty that we can get a return of capital that quickly and get to an inferior return, because it's just these numbers. And let me be really transparent with you here. So this is also why we don't like charging all the fees. So in a typical like flip model, fund managers, syndicators, they extract all these tiny little fees that add up to a huge amount of money. But when you're flipping that asset every few years, the big pop from the sale, it's really sexy to give a big, 6-figure check back to your investor when you sell the asset. It's easy to take a bunch of fees out of that and it's not super noticeable. But it really penalizes this business model, right?
Mhm.
Because if we're taking out a bunch of fees on the front end of the deal, it might take us 5 years instead of 2 years to get to that cash out refi, which means that we have really reduced the velocity of that capital. So in the long run, it will actually make Elaine and I wealthier to waive those fees on the front end of the deal because
we're growing together.
exactly.
Right.
Those people that they get their money back that fast and they're in the deal forever, they're going to reinvest over and over and over again. So all of a sudden we can have $100 million in assets together instead of a few $1,000,000 of assets that we got all these fees. So because of the way the math works, like it's a win-win deal. And
Absolutely.
it's no more complicated than this. This is the whole business model right here.
That leads you pretty easily to never sell. So I hope you can take, these numbers and wonder, okay, well, if I can keep the property, get all of my cash out, still continue to cash flow it, still continue to benefit from the debt pay down and appreciation of that asset, and yet buy the next one, well, why in the world would I ever sell? Why in the world? I spent time acquiring this property. Maybe I've done a big renovation, maybe a small renovation. I've placed an excellent tenant. There's always what we call like a break-in period when you first own any property where there's just more maintenance tickets in the first year. And that's totally okay because you're getting the property to the level of excellence that you want it to be. So why, the analogy that we say is like, it would be like developing a really close friendship with someone and all the jokes that they don't like and the foods that they like and their favorite places to go and what time they go to bed, and you can't text them past this hour, and then saying, well, I'm just going to make a new friend. Well, no, keep that friend and make a new friend and get them to know each other. There's so much abundance out there. So I hope it's very easy to see from the previous slide where our never sell investment thesis comes from. This is another example of the previous number. So we're continuing just kind of a different way of thinking about the numbers there. We joke that we should have named our company Golden Goose Real Estate and not Black Swan Real Estate.
We need to trademark that or something for some future vehicle.
So in year 5, that asset is worth $281,000. If you go back a couple slides, you can see that. The original note was $200,000. There's been $27,000 in debt pay down. So that mortgage has $173,000 remaining on it. And someone might say, I'm ready to sell. I've owned this thing for 5 years. I'm ready to graduate to the next level, whatever that means.
I'm going to 1031 exchange.
I'm going to do a 1031. I'm kind of over it and I'm going to sell. Well, in general, you pay real estate commissions. There's a make ready cost, utilities, a little bit of holding time, those sorts of things. So in general, the number that we quote when someone sells is that they net 90% of purchase price. And we actually made it larger in here. We did 93 to really show that even with the best possible sale, still probably not a good decision in our opinion to sell. So if you sold at $281,000 and you netted $93,000, you would get $261,000 in cash. You would pay off your $173,000 mortgage and you would end up with $88,000 in proceeds. So you have a tax consequence at that time that you need to solve. And that comes from, you originally put 50K in, you have 38,000 of equity profit, 23,000 of cash flow for a total of 61,000 in total profit. So you started with 50,000 in and you ended with 61,000 out. It's pretty good. You doubled your money in 5 years. That's a super good metric by anyone's standard. If you double your money every 5 years for a lifetime, you're going to do okay. Or you can do a cash out refi. So at the end of year 5, you do a cash out refi at an 80% LTV. And assuming that 281 valuation at 80%, that's $225,000 in refi proceeds. So you originally put 50,000 in, you have 52,000 in net equity proceeds, plus your 23,000 of cash flow. And so you have 25,000 of leftover profit, and you still have the house. That's huge, right? So your golden goose has hatched. That house can have another house. This works for single family, multifamily, big assets, little assets, distressed assets, assets that are, kind of more like a turnkey model. It works over and over and over again. This is a different way of thinking about the same numbers. I find the previous set of numbers to be more intuitive. I find this to be kind of a little more complicated because you're factoring in all the different buckets of profit and tax consequences and those sorts of things. But it's a different way of showing why someone would likely never want to sell, in our opinion.
Absolutely. So keep it simple. We've talked about a lot of our values here. I would say the Black Swan way could be encapsulated in, some of these core values that we've just described. We call it whole circle investing. So that's being holistically focused, vertically integrated, creating value in every step of the value chain here. So we, do our own construction management. We do our own property management. We are our own real estate brokerage. Very successful groups are very vertically integrated. Facebook makes their own servers. Facebook makes their own data centers. Facebook has their own university where they train programmers. Vertical integration is really powerful. We call it whole circle investing. Race to refi is a really critical concept. So we like to keep things incredibly simple, and you can break down any investment opportunity by just saying, how quickly can I get to a cash out refi? And you don't have to think about IRR. You don't have to think about your cash on cash rate of return, your total annualized rate of return, and your LTV and your down payment and your interest rate or anything like that. Just model the whole thing out and just say, how quickly can I get my money back? So, for example, land banking is a really popular, kind of investment vehicle out there right this second. It's very safe and secure. And that's the concept of just buying raw land and kind of sitting on it. It's very boring, but actually has like a halfway decent return. But here's the thing. It doesn't produce any cash flow, and you don't exactly get the best leverage on it because it doesn't, generate cash flow. So you can't really do a cash out refi on it anytime soon. You kind of buy the land, you put your money in it, and it just sits in a safe store of value. So we're not a huge fan of land banking. It's just not something that we advocate. You can use this really simple litmus test to evaluate, how good is any investment opportunity just with that simple criteria. And then values added real estate. There's value added real estate. We like values added real estate. So just asking yourself.
We created that phrase for this presentation.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, we need to trademark that one too.
Yeah. Doing the right thing, doing the hard thing. We think that being a good landlord, we think that being a good fund manager, we think that being a good real estate investor, someone who does the right thing, is an end unto itself. And if you do that, you're probably going to be pretty successful. That's just how the world works. We've met with lots of really successful investors over the years, and I would say that the most successful ones, somewhat universally, they just do the right thing, and that tends to be recognized in the long run. So those are just a few really, really simple catchphrases that might be kind of memorable for you on how we recommend investing. Finally, never stop. So we're a big fan of The Infinite Game.
Read this book.
Yeah,
listen to the Audible. Book. Yep. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. So there, just to summarize that very quickly, Simon Sinek kind of posits that there's two kinds of games. There's a finite game and an infinite game. And in a finite game, you typically have a time box, like a fixed set of time constraints. It's frequently a human construct where there's a sort of a score of one kind or another. There's a winner and there's a loser. And the goal is to beat your opponent, to not lose and to win. And you could think of war. People think of it as a finite game where there's a winner and a loser, and the goal is to get all the territory or to kill all the enemy soldiers or whatever. Or a football game, or people frequently think of real estate investing as a finite game, but that's just preposterous. It's more like an infinite game. In an infinite game, there's an unlimited number of players. There are no winners, but there are losers. And when you can no longer play the game, that's when you lose the game. When people run out of resources, or more likely when they run out of will to persevere, that's when they lose the infinite game. And anytime someone who thinks they're playing a finite game goes to battle, it competes with someone who's playing the infinite game, the person who's playing the infinite game, they almost always win, because the finite game player, they're asking themselves, how can I beat my opponent? And the infinite game person, they're saying, how can I never stop playing the game? And that is a much higher quality question that drives you to a totally different playbook, a totally different set of driving and guiding principles and actions that get you to far higher outcomes. And when you master the infinite game at its apex, Your goal actually becomes to perpetuate the game, to make sure that the game doesn't stop, because that's you have mastered the game so well. Like you are never going to lose. You are never going to run out of will, and you're probably never going to run out of resources, but the game might stop. And, Elaine and I have had a few kind of crazy moments like that where we're meeting with government officials and other people in our industry. And we say, hey, these are systemic, risks or vulnerabilities that we need to address, because if we don't, the game will stop. And Elaine and I are at a place in the infinite game where that's kind of the biggest threat to us. It's very unlikely that we're going to run out of money anytime soon. And we're certainly not going to run out of willpower anytime soon. But what if, for example, private ownership of real estate was made illegal? Well, that would throw a pretty big wrench into the works for us. And there have been a few bills put before Congress to propose that very concept, as a matter of fact. So it's a life-changing concept. Understand the infinite game and then apply that to your daily life. So ask yourself, just as Mark had said earlier, is this a property that you'd want to own for a very long time? Or is this an investment decision that's going to propel me forward in the infinite game, to make it possible for me to never stop investing, to never stop creating new wealth, to never stop creating new living opportunities for the people that live in that property, to never stop creating new opportunities for the contractors that make improvements to that property. And that might sound like kind of a silly question, but it's not at all. So like we have a clause in our lease agreement that if you want to buy a house, we will sell you a house, because we simply ask the question, how can we never stop providing more value for our tenants? How can we stay in relationship with our tenants even after they don't want to rent anymore? And we have contracting crews that we've worked with for many years, and we've got this job site slowing down here. So we ask ourselves, how can we stay in relationship with these people? How can we never stop providing value for these people? How can we stay in the infinite game with these people? And when you play the infinite game, everybody else, if they don't understand the concept, they're a little bit mystified by it. But they step up, they start playing the infinite game with you, and they don't even necessarily understand why or how. You'll have a really weird meeting one day where you're like, yeah, we love the work that you've been doing on our properties. And so we're just here to brainstorm to figure out ways that you can like keep doing work for us, because we don't have as many rehabs in the pipeline right now. And they're like, but I thought your job was to like hold my feet to the fire and to try to negotiate me down on price and stuff. And we're like, well, no, I mean, we would like lower prices and stuff, obviously, but you do such good work for us. Like, we want to make sure that work never stops. We want you to make as much money as you possibly can, because if we're holding your feet to the fire and trying to get the lowest possible price, we know you're going to try to cut corners someplace we may not notice, or you may just not make money at it until you have to give up. And that's the definition of the finite game. We're here to play the infinite game. We want to be in partnership with you forever. So just a few concrete examples of why you should never stop playing the infinite game.
I think what we're seeing now is there's a lot of deals out there with challenging debt situations because they had floating rate instruments and those sorts of things. And the industry is really small. Like, believe it or not, the industry is really small. And I don't pretend that we know all of the players, but we know a lot of them at this point. And we might call them and say, your deal is struggling. Is there anything we can do to help you? No, I don't want to sell you my deal. Nope. That's not what we're asking.
That's right.
We're asking you, is there anything we can do to help you? Can we brainstorm with you? Can we, connect you with a lender who can refi you out? Can we just listen? Can we be there as a listening ear for you? Because we have to protect the entire industry at this point. Because if a few deals go sour, then investor sentiment fades. And then that makes it challenging for us to continue to do business. So that's an example of how, like, there is no competition, right? We're all in the game together. We're all in real estate investment, asset management, property management, private equity. We're doing it together. And some people don't get that. I don't want to pretend that it's all, sunshine and rainbows and that all of those calls are received well, but most of them are, because most people realize a generous heart when they see it. And it may not be the first phone call or even the third phone call, but it happens. And then they see that, our goal is to make it that real estate investment is always successful for everyone, so that the game can continue. And that it's so freeing when you think about deals that way. It doesn't have to become, oh, look, someone's deal is going south, I might be able to, swoop in and buy it and make a ton of money for myself. It becomes, how can we all win together?
Yeah. And people will frequently ask us, like, why are you so generous, or why are you so transparent, or like don't you get burned by that? Don't people take advantage of you? And first of all, I'd say most people out there are good people. Like, you
Mhm.
might read on the front page of the news about the one bad apple or whatever, and we're not fools. Like, we, have a good read on people. Elaine is a Mayo Clinic trained psychiatrist, and I have a bachelor's degree in ministry. So we've been working with people for a while. If for a fun time, read the book People of the Lie. People of the Lie by M. Scott Peck. So he defines love as the selfless devotion to the spiritual growth of another person, and he defines evil as the selfless devotion to the spiritual destruction of another person. And when you train yourself, you can see almost in a heartbeat
Mhm.
evil, like in a moment, like just even the turn of a phrase, and you can know that this is an evil person. You can pity that person, help them grow, and hopefully overcome that evil. But even if somehow we got burned, we would love to get the opportunity early and often to be disappointed in our relationship with someone. And being in relationship with someone, I think, is about the highest compliment, the highest power a person can possibly have. And I pity the people who have disappointed us and they no longer have the privilege of being in relationship with us. And so on the whole, I would rather figure out those things early and
Mhm.
often in any relationship. And the best way to do that is just be like really hopelessly transparent with people, and people will surprise you 99% of the time in positive ways. We hope you take this message to heart. We think that this is a really core concept. Like, just believe in the fundamental goodness of people, and that goodness will be returned to you 99% of the time.
This is a perfect example of how real estate is just a way to apply the values of living to an economic activity as a way to practice. So if we, call a broker or a competitor or something like that, we
Mhm.
can practice this skill, because it's much easier to practice it to practice any mindset skill in the workplace than it is in, kind of more intimate relationships, friends, children, parents, those sorts of things. That's just, in our experience, kind of how the human mind works. The name of the book is The Infinite Game by
Yes.
Simon Sinek. Perfect example of why we love real estate, because it gives us daily opportunities to practice these things. And then we end on work-life balance, or what we call work-life integration. So a common question we get is, how do you do it all? Or, what is financial freedom? We're big believers in the integrated life, big believers in finding ways to mix business and pleasure and growth and family. So like an example of that is, we had childcare at our conference, because we know that arranging childcare for travel is very challenging for some people. And even if they have great childcare at home, they don't necessarily want to be away from their children. They want to take their children, especially children who are a little bit older, they want to expose them to some of these ideas. And so that was a way that we said, well, how can we, practice work-life integration in the things that we are creating? Oh, well, we will have childcare available. And the concept that I think is really important here, because we do a lot of calls with people about financial freedom. And there's this belief that when I get there, when I get to some number, I would say, the number we most often hear is like 10,000 per month. When I get there, I will feel less stressed, or I will feel more comfortable, or I'll be able to relax. And that's not really true. The destination is not the most important part. It's the journey. And what we find time and time again is that if people get there and they haven't worked on themselves, they feel even more empty, because
Mhm.
they expect this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and not like a financial pot of gold, but an emotional pot of gold. And it's just not there. They still have the same problems, the same miscommunications with their spouse, or challenges with their children, or their people pleasing tendencies, or whatever those things are. We all have them. But what really happens, that what we find, is that when people start really thinking about and planning, what do I want life to look like as I achieve financial freedom and time freedom, and what things can I put into place today, regardless of what the numbers actually show, then the financial process coincides with the personal growth process. And that's really where the magic happens. And then inevitably the next phone call is, 6 months or a year later from that person, they'll call and say, I only have like 1,000 per month in passive income, but I feel completely different because I've worked on my mindset, because I've really thought about, I really want time freedom. I had a call today with a good friend of mine. She works 0.8 as a physician, and she's going to 0.6. And she said, when I really thought about it, there were a few other things I could do and some settings I could tweak with my tax withholdings, because I have some passive losses from real estate. And, I'm going to go from 0.8 to 0.6, but I'm actually going to have a much smaller, like true reduction in my income. And I'm like, yes, like that's a perfect example of that when you start thinking about, well, if the end goal is this, how can I just get there faster? And who do I need to become in the process to really have that freedom? Freedom is seldom about money. Time and time again, the data shows, many years ago, it was $75,000 per year. Let's call it 100 because of inflation. That's the number that after that, people aren't happier with more money. They're able to have things like food and shelter and opportunities for themselves and their loved ones. And every extra dollar doesn't really change the needle. The needle has to come, the needle change has to come internally. And I think when we put this presentation together like a year and a half ago, this was less prominent. And today I think it is more. I don't pretend that that's because of us. I think just more people are reaching financial freedom. It's more of a goal in the country. Maybe we've had some small impact on it, but I think people are realizing that it's not just money. It's the personal growth piece that has to go with it. And as a psychiatrist, that's super important to me, because I know that success without fulfillment is like the ultimate loss. And not only is it, listen to this carefully, success without fulfillment is worse than no success.
Yes.
Right? Because someone thinks that they're going to get some sort of emotional outcome from the success, and then they don't get it. And then it can quickly spiral into depression, anxiety, drug use, alcohol use, because there's this like feeling that they thought they would get and then they didn't get it. And then they're like, well, now I don't know what to do. And so you have to get the success and the fulfillment at the same time. And our experience is that the fulfillment rapidly outpaces the success.
Absolutely.
This was kind of a typical day in our life. So doing lots of masterminds. That's something that we love about real estate, is that it's constantly, forcing us to up our game, to be in a relationship with new people, exposing ourselves to new ideas, managing our team, doing a presentation. This was an example of, you can see I have my webcam there. So we were doing a presentation for one of the masterminds that we were in, meeting with our attorneys, doing family photos, doing investor calls. So you can see it's kind of back and forth of working on ourselves, working with our team, serving others through teaching and speaking, doing very technical work on the business, being with our family, serving investors. And it's really hard to tell here what's work and what's not, right? Like we've been working with the same attorney for 7 years. He knew us when we had like literally almost nothing. And so it's a lot of fun to meet with him and say, this is what we're working on this week. And, how can we get even better? We love working with investors. A big part of, our mission today, like we said earlier, is how can we take this freedom and share it with as many people as possible, so that as many people have access to this freedom. And so it becomes a life of, you're not really sure when you're working and when you're not working.
And this is a great, like, very concrete, tactical example. So we wanted to get some really cool photos done by this really cool professional photographer that's a long distance away. When we did that before we brought our kids, like, our kids were kind of crabby from the car ride by the time we got there. We had a lot to do. We weren't going to meet the photographer until later in the day. So it felt like it was going to be this really heavy, stressful day. And anytime in your life you experience stress, that is a symptom of a failing process, a failing mindset, a lack of creativity. Anytime you experience stress, that's your body's way of telling you, your mind's way of telling you, you're doing it wrong and there's a better approach. So we said, okay, we're gonna go up early in the day so we can do like our calls and stuff while we're driving, and that's like kind of effortless. So the drive time's not quite so miserable. And we're gonna have a member of our team drive our kids up later in the day. But then we have to do like a presentation. So we have to like find a place.
This was during COVID.
Yeah.
The heat of COVID. We're like, we'll go to the library. Nope. Library's closed. We'll go to the community college. Oh my gosh. You would have thought we were trying to rob the place.
Yeah.
Like this.
and we were starting to get into a low mindset of like, oh, well, this was a terrible idea. And finally, one of us was like, I know we'll just get a hotel room, a really nice hotel room, a suite that has like a desk and everything. We got one for super cheap. And then we had this convenient staging area where we could, spend time with our kids and get ready for the photos, maybe have some romantic time together, maybe stay the night if we really wanted to. Like, how can we just like lean into the chaos of the moment, the problem, and turn that into a solution? And so, we were going from 6 a.m. until probably 9 p.m. that day. But I can't tell
Much
you,
like today.
I could, yeah, today, we started the day with a tenant issue escalation, literally 8 a.m. Like the very first thing I did when I walked in was, and it takes something pretty bad to happen before it escalates to my level. And I had to walk in and say, how can I serve this person? So got on the phone with this tenant, with this like extreme escalation situation. And that's how I got to start the day. And Elaine and I are going to be working until 10 o'clock at night. So like theoretically, we've clocked in another 16-hour day, but we stopped. We went to a fine restaurant to get a meal together. I have walked like probably 12 or 13,000 steps today because I've walked so many apartment buildings today. Like I got my exercise time in. Like, when was I working and when was I playing? I couldn't tell you. I know I'm gonna go to bed like feeling exhausted but fulfilled. And this is a perfect day. I want to live like this for the rest of my life. I never want to retire. I never want to do anything other than this. And we believe this is the integrated life, and the concept of work-life balance is just, it's a scarcity mentality that's not necessary.
Our final principle is think big. So this is the amazing Steve Jobs. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
We talked about this with the tech fund, and we were talking to our mentor, Christian Mack, and we're like, yeah, we hate how private equity has all these fees, and like our model can't fit into private equity. So we can't do private. Like I sneer a little bit now because it's such a limiting mindset, when I say it to myself today. And we're hanging out with Christian, talking to Christian, and he was like, well, then just change private equity.
Like just that's it. Like,
yeah.
Well, order a glass of wine at dinner.
Yeah. It seems like you've got a pretty good model. Like I think your model is better than the usual model, so it's like the largest agglomeration of capital in all of capitalism. Just change it. And the people who are freaking crazy enough to think they can are the only ones that ever do. The people who say, oh, no, we can't fit in that model. We're going to stay small. We're going to keep doing one property at a time. We're going to limit our light. We're going to hide our light from the world. We can't do that. Like those people, they never change the world. It seems so effortless. Oh, your model doesn't fit private equity, so change private equity. Like,
oh, and the first, I don't know, 10,000 times, I personally would say this. I don't want to speak for you. I mean, I just felt stupid. I'm like, do people really believe this? And like, who am I to say this? Like, I have like 100 million in assets under management. Like, oh my gosh, how much do, like Blackstone and BlackRock, like these, big players, and like, but then you just keep saying it, and you just keep saying it and saying it and saying it. And I hope that everyone on this call has something that they just think like, it's like, if the world was this, I wish the world looked like this. It's not right that. Like, those are the phrases that when you hear them, for everyone that's listening, you probably have an instant reaction when I say it's not right that.
Yes.
Like, where did your mind go? That's the thing that you can change. That's the, for us, it was, how can we take our professional experience, the experience we have of investing, of growing our own financial freedom. It's not right that private equity favors general partners through so many unnecessary fees. Boom, let's change it.
Yes.
Let's put the LPs first. It'll be totally different. It's going to be really hard at first. People won't understand it. Our attorneys don't understand it, but we'll just keep saying it. We'll just keep doing it. We'll teach other people how to do it. And there's, the tipping point. Malcolm Gladwell teaches the idea of the tipping point, that any one of us that really wants to make a change, it feels like, oh, well, to do that, there's 7 billion people in the world. I'll have to impact, I don't know, 1 billion people. That's not really true. It's a very small number. And then the tipping point takes over, and it tips over, and it becomes an idea. And, Steve Jobs is just an amazing person. The world would have been better for more years of his life, of his crazy thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, just kind of funny here, we added this. So this was when we launched Single Family at Scale. So Single Family at Scale is still available. This is the vehicle that has our entire playbook. Literally we said, going back to the tipping point of, we can't do this alone. We can't do every single deal. That's just not possible. We have big, crazy goals, but our goals aren't that big and crazy. Like, we do have to sleep at some point. We do want to be with each other, our children, those sorts of things. So we have to do it with others. And the way to do that is through teaching. So we literally put our entire playbook out there, and people said, you guys are crazy. You're giving away like all of your secrets. I'm like, there's no secrets. There's just a good way to do business. And, now we've kind of sort of figured out that like Single Family at Scale is our cookbook, and our private equity fund is our private restaurant. So someone can use the cookbook and cook at home and make all their own meals and go out and do excellent deals. And the world is a better place. And we are very happy for it. Or someone can say, wow, it really looks like they really know how to cook. I want to go to the private restaurant. I want them to be my private chef. And both of those are good. Lots of people do both. Lots of, even the folks on this call, lots of them have done, kind of the single family thing. And then they also invest in the funds. And then this is our passion project that 100% of revenue from this project goes to charity, 100% of revenue. So we cover all of the cost of hosting the website, the PayPal fees, and all of that stuff. And this has allowed us to give about $100,000. And it's
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I'm actually going to pull up, while Nick is kind of finishing some of the slides here, I'm going to pull up. So we donated, about $30,000 to the build of a playground. And by we, I mean all of you. Many of you in this call are part of Single Family at Scale. And that playground is going into the ground today. Can anyone see that? I don't know. You can see the tree, and then see in the back, there's those like orange sort of things. Those are the main pillars of the playground. So just super exciting to see a real playground,
Tangible good.
that real children will play on for the next few decades, because we said a lot of people want to learn from us, and we don't really have the time or the bandwidth to offer individual coaching, but we want to impact as many lives as we possibly can. And our real estate portfolio has provided us with tremendous financial freedom. So this doesn't have to be a profit-making venture for us. So how can we do good and good and good and good? It's good for the investor because they learn. It's good for us because it shares our business model, and it's good for the world because it goes to charity. That is an example of the integrated life.
I remember when you came up with this idea, we were at,
I was
at
at
the
this
Highland
huge playground.
The Highland Playground, which we were at this past weekend. It's the biggest playground we've ever been to or heard of. Just an insanely huge, cool, awesome. It's like an hour and a half away. We drive there all the time to bring our kids because it's just such a cool playground. And we wanted to create this course, but we hated this like really expensive for-profit model for courses. And it turned into this like limiting belief, just like how we couldn't have a private equity fund because we didn't like how private equity funds work. We'll just change how courses work. So Elaine was like, she like screamed from the other side of the playground, I figured it out. We're gonna make it so 100% of the revenue can go to charity, and then we are gonna build a playground, which was a passion project. We really wanted to build a playground, so we were at Highland play area, and now literally like not that far in the future, the playground's going into the ground, like it exists, and it's a $100,000 playground, and we kind of bootstrapped that with an investment, and just so cool to see that thing come to fruition. And we hope that this isn't us bragging, like I hope you can see how we were like afflicted by these limiting beliefs, like it's not right that, like, what, fill in the blank, what's the thing that you want to do, that you want to change, that you want to give, that you want to be or become. Like this is something that will get you up in the morning.
Absolutely. MeetBlackSwan.com is our landing page with our calendars, our newsletter, sign up for these community hours, our Facebook group, all sorts of ways. So if you want to block a time with us, or you have someone you'd like to connect into this community, we love referrals. It's how our community grows. You can go to MeetBlackSwan.com or send them to Meet Black Swan. And then
you just want to talk about the thing you want to change. Just block a time on our calendar. We try to be
lots available. Of those calls. Tech Fund is open. Black Swan Fund 2 is open. Would love to see as many of you in person and virtually for the Financial Freedom Through Real Estate Conference in just a few weeks. Mark your calendars for our event next fall. We're super excited about that. That wraps up our official slides. There are a couple of really good questions we will hit as we finish up here. If anyone has any other questions, definitely drop them in the chat. Someone shared privately. I really appreciate this. This person, a female, said, I've been saying women don't need to change to fit into the man's world. The world needs to change to fit women. So that, that must have been her, like, that's not right, or this needs to change. A big thing that we think about all the time. Nick and I see it every single day as a, I don't necessarily think that we're married matters. We could just be business partners, but that we're business partners. One of us is male and one of us is female. The things we see are just, what word would you use, Nick? Bananas? Surprising. I think that's a good one. I made a referral today for someone to a marketing person. Marketing is squarely in my vertical in our company. Nick doesn't do anything with marketing. And that person had a call with this person and then emailed me back and said, I wanted to kind of, talk to you a little bit more about your referral. I said, yep, how about Thursday at noon? And they said, well, I want to talk to Nick. I'm like, okay.
I don't recommend talking to Nick.
That's fine. He knows nothing about this person, but stuff like that happens all the time.
I'm sorry, the ego blows you suffer on a daily basis.
Yep.
Living in a man's world here. I get to watch it firsthand. It's fascinating.
Yeah, that's a word. But just trying to do my part of representing women well and making opportunities available to women, and like having childcare at our conference. I mean, that's for everyone, right? Men are parents too, but it's really for women. It's really because the burden of childcare falls often to women. So just thinking about the things,
if you hadn't noticed, like, look at this slide, or I guess we just took the slides down, didn't we? Put that slide back up for a second. Share screen here. All right. So does this look like something that is, does this look like a masculine slide or a feminine? People are still awake. We started a little bit later tonight.
Yeah, we did start later tonight. We had been starting at 7 p.m. Central. Our Zoom really is struggling.
Yeah, we need to.
This happened once before. It's never happened before.
I'll do a tune up on this computer.
We need to get hardwired in, but
I was just saying. So this is a very feminine slide, and this appeals to our target demographic of women. Elaine directs all of our marketing, and the majority of our investors are female. Because 99% of investment marketing is targeted to males. It's incredible. It is really, especially when I'll go to like a pitch session for a private equity fund. There'll be one or maybe two women in the room and 100 men, and it's just presumed that the only meaningful audience there is male. And so we go to the blue ocean. If you ever go, look at blue ocean, red ocean theory. Like there's a huge gap in the market, an unserved audience. It's just not right that there's a presumption that only men can control investment capital. It's a fascinating thing to me. And so people frequently ask, like, how have you grown so fast? Or, why are your investors so dedicated to you? Well, because we market to them, because we understand that they're not a served group. So this is not rocket science. It's like these gaps, I feel like, are painfully obvious all the time. There's so many problems in the world to fix, and this is just a really easy example right here.
Absolutely. Let's do the couple of questions here. So Merlin asked early in the night, there wasn't a great place to put it in. Do we have a succession plan? So we do, and I'll kind of share a little bit about ours, but really I want all of you to be thinking about estate planning. So we first did estate planning right after we had our first daughter. We essentially had like almost no assets. Really, the only asset we had would have been our life insurance, which of course doesn't materialize until death. But we had our daughter, and so we had to think about what do we want from her. And we don't really have relatives that could easily take care of her. And of course, we didn't want her to like go to the state or some horrifying thing. And so we did an estate plan. And that process is magical. Again, it's all about mindset and asking high quality questions. Someone can think of an estate plan as like this morbid thing to do, or it can be, well, what do I really want life to look like after I'm gone? And the interesting thing about estate planning is you have to construct it such that it has, like a lifetime plan, but then also that what if it goes into effect tomorrow, right? Like, I don't have grandchildren right now, but maybe I will someday. I have children, so it's likely that I will have at least one grandchild. And I had to construct my estate plan with my grandchildren in mind, which seems kind of crazy because they're probably not coming for 20 or maybe even 30 years. but I could die tomorrow. And the estate plan kicks in the moment I die. And so I have to make these plans for things that could happen well after I have any ability to make decisions on them. So our succession plan on the business side is we have a board of directors. So we have a 6-person board who are experts in real estate, who would be tasked with making all of the strategic decisions for the company. And then we have a 7th professional trustee who would be the tiebreaker there. And that board of directors would be tasked with leading the property management company and the asset management. And then from there, we really had to make a strategic decision that we would not legislate from the grave. So for example, we don't say, liquidate everything, pay off all the investors and move on. What if it's a really bad year? What if it's 2008? That would be the craziest thing in the world for us to give that directive. We also don't necessarily say, well, carry out the plan and hold everything for the 20 or 25 years that we talk about would be the plan if we were living, because it may make sense to sell. That may be the most reasonable choice. And so we pick that board and we trust them and we train them and we talk to them about our values and what we see in the market and what we believe would be, the best decision for that, say, year. We meet with them regularly. And then we just have to, it's a who, not a how. And so that's our succession plan for our business. On the personal side, it's way more complicated. And, I won't necessarily go into that for, privacy for our children and family members and stuff, but it's things like our children really have to make their own life before they inherit any sort of wealth. Charitable giving is much more important to us than necessarily keeping our wealth in our family. I'm actually working with our estate attorney. I want him to come and speak to this audience because the work we have done with him has been so life-changing, has really shaped so much of our business that I think everyone needs to think about. What do you want the world to look like when you're not here? And hopefully that's, when you hit 100 years old or whatever age that you want to live to be, but it could be tomorrow. And kind of dancing back and forth there, I find is a great way to kind of force some personal growth.
Yeah. Next question. Can you hypothetically project / assume that an investor will have a similar financial growth scale over 10 years with a single family home versus an investor investing with savvy syndicators like Black Swan funds? Great question. So if I understand this correctly, it's let's assume that on one hand you could go buy a single family home, on the other you could invest with a syndicator like Black Swan. So I can't really speak to other syndicators, but I can certainly speak to ourselves. I will tell you that like a savvy investor in syndications should be able to hit, let's say, 15 to 20% total annualized rate of return if they're doing pretty well and syndications are doing pretty well, that sort of thing. So multiple times higher than you might get putting that money in the stock market. So I think you're kind of better off there. If you go look at like our pro forma from earlier, you'll see, let's say a 30% total annualized rate of return. So on paper, you are able to hit, like a higher rate of return doing it yourself. I think there's a lot of assumptions that go into that. And there's also, a risk component to that as well. So you certainly assume much more risk by being directly involved versus being a limited partner, which by definition has extremely limited risk. The way we've kind of dialed in our fund, so to speak, is we've made sure that you would be probably slightly better off being in our fund than if you were to kind of execute our plan. If you're following the cookbook, you'd probably be slightly better off by going to the restaurant in that metaphor. And the reason for that, and you might ask, okay, there's this 50-50 split in the fund, how could that be? So there's a million little advantages to being in the fund. So for example,
like the debt that we talked about.
The biggest one would probably be the debt. So we are currently actively soliciting for $100 million of debt across all these different projects. So we get a different price than someone who is actively soliciting for $250 of debt, just like how Costco.
250,000.
I'm sorry. That's right. Yes, there we go.
I wish houses were $250. I'd buy a lot of them.
Yeah, Costco, they pay a different price for produce than someone does when they're a retail shopper, because they buy in bulk and they get a huge discount. So we're just able to get a ridiculously better price on the debt. We're also able to get a better price on the asset, and part of that's just because we have the fund. So for example, we're touring an asset today, a very big asset. And we said, we have about $22 million of cash let's make a deal. In fact, I said that phrase to 3 different commercial brokers today. I said, we have about $22 million of cash. Let's make a deal. And you get to see the deal that you just don't get to see if you don't have, a healthy 8 figures of cash to place. It's not even a question of buying it at a good price. Like, you cannot buy it at all unless you can send someone a proof of funds, screenshot, that kind of thing. You just get access to a different level of deal that way. So all these things kind of stack up, so to speak, so that it more than offsets that, that additional, the 50% split.
Like, we buy our flooring by the truckload. We're working on shipping in our countertops from China. Like,
we discount our property management services deeply to the fund, because it's way cheaper for us to operate our property management company for the fund than for a third party. The third party property management, people want to have a phone call, and we should take the phone call if they want to have a phone call with us about their property that we manage. We don't ever have to have that phone call with the fund. So instead of like, there's a water heater out, we theoretically need to like call the investor and get their approval, but they're a busy, physician or something, and they can't get back to us, and a day goes by and we finally get authorization to replace the water heater, and the plumber is obviously not on site still, and there's all this back and forth. And whereas if the fund owns it, okay, we trust that plumber, just replace the water heater. Like, so all of a sudden the time that our property management company has to invest in managing that situation has gone down by 99.9%. So we're able to steeply discount our property management services to the fund versus to third-party property management clients. So there's a bunch of advantages there associated with that. That's just for the Black Swan fund versus kind of the Black Swan cookbook, but I suspect that might be the specific question you're asking there. So I'm speaking that directly. And then again, you have to ask yourself, what's the value of your time? And
that's really where I went with this answer. So you went toward like economies of scale and vertical integration. And what I was thinking was, over a 10-year time period, I think it's kind of likely that someone, could have as much success with single family homes. Nick talked about like the deals and the discounts and the economies we're able to create. I think the thing that's important to note is 4 years into our investing journey, Nick left his career to invest full time. And not to be, financially free and to be on the beach and just kind of relaxing, to truly work in our company 40, 50, 80 hours a week. And I think that's a big part of the success. And so now what we do is we take that time and we lever it for the use of others. So in real estate investing, there's levering capital. That's a big part of the reason why real estate investing is a lucrative investment versus, say, like stocks or bonds. There's levering time, which is what I just talked about. And, we have a whole team of people now that are managing all of the assets. So when someone invests with us, they're not just getting our time, they're getting the time of, a couple of dozen of our full-time employees and a couple of hundred of our contractors, levering expertise and levering relationships. So to do really well in passive investing, one really only needs to lever capital and relationships. So you need to create a good relationship with someone that you're investing with, know their business thesis. We just shared our entire thesis, be able to trust them, feel confident in your investment with them, and lever capital, but you don't necessarily need to lever any time or resources or expertise. So that's really where I think of it as kind of the different thing is if someone, wanted to do full-time investing for 10 years, I would hope that they would learn all the lessons that we had learned and could replicate, a similar pattern to our success. Most people don't want to do that. Most people, when they do get that time freedom, they don't want to spend it on another job. They already had a great job. They were a physician or a dentist or a teacher, something that they loved. They don't necessarily want to leave that thing and go be a full-time real estate investor, whereas for us, for whatever reason, that was an extremely compelling future.
Yeah. So the fund didn't come out. So the everything we do is all about delivering value to our investors. So we have a few investors that own a very large number of homes with us, but a lot of investors, they'd buy like just a couple of homes, and then they would, figure out that even with a property management company, it's still kind of a lot of work. They're like, I keep getting these notices that my insurance got dropped and I need to go get new insurance. And my loan servicer somehow missed a payment and I have to call them and get my fee waived and figure out where they screwed up, and my taxes changed, and I've got all these properties in different zip codes that have different assessors that have different taxes. And so we said, how can we meet the needs of these people and still deliver kind of a comparable level of returns? So yeah, I think you nailed it, Elaine. It really comes down to, do you eventually want to be like do you want this to be your full-time job? Or do you want this to be a passive investment? And those are kind of your two options. And you're building a skill set of both, right? So if you went and you invested in 10 different private equity funds or 10 different syndications, you'd be building a skill set, building relationships at that thing, and again, getting really good at that. And if you went and bought 10 single family homes, you'd be building a skill set and getting good at that. So it's kind of the direction that you want to grow in. Elaine and I would say have always kind of been more active, people or whatever. And so we went that route, although we just put, $500,000 into the Lotus Fund.
Yeah.
Because we're getting to a place where we kind of have more money than time. And we could theoretically go buy tech companies or, on our own, but
Yep. We know that to do it well, it has to be a full-time thing.
That's right.
It's really, so who do we know that's doing it really well?
Yep.
And that has been a really,
so yeah, just practice or don't do what we say, do what we do. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. That has been a really interesting experience to be, on the LP side. Technically we're raising money for the Lotus Fund. So we're on the GP side, but our capital is right along with, all of our LPs capital. And I think, we are doing kind of exactly what we said, of building that relationship, trusting them, knowing that they are vertically integrated, that they have all of the systems and processes in place, and that because they're doing it full-time, day in and day out, they are doing it way better than we ever could.
Yep.
And leveraging their expertise, their connections, their resources. So an excellent question.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
that's really good. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yep, absolutely. Let's wrap it up. Our call next month is, I believe, Monday, October 24th at 8 p.m. Central. We're trying that as our new time for the next couple of times. So let us know your feedback there. Just trying to find a time that works for everyone across the very large United States.
Live at 2 a.m. if that's what y'all want.
So probably, we're up with our babies.
We did a few middle of the day calls
long time ago.
Maybe we could try those again sometime. But yeah.
We do have our Single Family at Scale call. So that's the private coaching group we do for the members of Single Family at Scale. That is Thursday the 15th. So just a few days from now, also at 8 p.m. Central. So if you're in Single Family at Scale, please join us for that. If you'd like to join Single Family at Scale, that's one of the many benefits is we meet monthly, and that's completely different than this. That's just all Q&A. So we don't have any slides, any presentation, any teaching. People just bring their deals.
Dive deep on, we love diving into a deal.
Yep, absolutely. Everyone have a very good night. Thank you all so much for spending the evening with us. Rachel put the feedback form in there. It would mean, so much to us if you took just an extra minute or two to give us some feedback. It's completely anonymous. We love meeting with you guys. We look forward to seeing you hopefully in person at PIMCon. And if not, on Facebook, connect with us on our calendars if you'd like, and then we'll see you on October 24th. Good night, everyone.
Bye.